Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for joining Congresswoman McBath, the North Georgia Low Income Taxpayer Clinic, and the IRS for our 2020 Tax Prep webinar. My name is Abigail Hewins, and I am Congresswoman McBath's Program Manager here in our Sandy Springs District Office. It's a pleasure to have each of you with us tonight. I'll go ahead and kick it off to Congresswoman McBath for some welcoming remarks.
Well, thank you so much, Abigail, and good evening. And thank you so much, everyone, for joining our tax prep webinar this evening. I'm just grateful for the opportunity to convene so many friends and neighbors for this virtual event, and just excited every time we're able to get together. And I know we're only able to do it virtually, but nonetheless, I'm very glad that we're able to spend some time together, and I hope it's meaningful for you tonight. As I've often said throughout the course of this pandemic, I'm so thankful for the technology that has really allowed us to remain connected and continue serving you throughout what I know has been a very, very difficult 12 months. And the purpose of tonight's webinar is to inform you about updates from the IRS regarding filing for tax year 2020 and free or low-cost resources that are available for taxpayers as they file their taxes. I must say that we're getting quite a number of questions in the office, and we wanted to make sure that we were providing those resources for you. And I've convened tonight representatives from the IRS and the North Georgia Low Income Tax Clinic to discuss these issues. And I look forward to introducing our guests very shortly. But first, I want to thank you all again for your engagement with my office. And it's so important that we continue to support one another through these difficult times. And I'm very grateful, just very thankful for this space to gather with you this evening and share those resources and get your questions answered. Thank you to those of you who submitted questions to our panelists when you registered for this event. And following their presentations from the IRS and the North Georgia Low Income Tax Clinic, we will have an opportunity to actually go through many of those questions. And now, without further ado, I would like to introduce our first guest. From the Internal Revenue Service, I want to introduce Alec Johnston, Congressional District Liaison. Alec, thank you for being with us today. And from the North Georgia Low Income Tax Clinic, I want to introduce Eric Santos, Executive Director. Eric, thank you for being with us. And again, thank you to both of our experts this evening. Just thank you for being with us, and thank you for sharing your time and your expertise with us. And Alex, if you'd like to go ahead at this time, we are ready for your presentation.
Thank you. It's so great to be with you today. My name is Alec Johnston, and I'm an IRS Congressional District Liaison serving the U.S. territories and possessions. And I'm going to be discussing several topics of interest today relating to this filing season. Next slide, please. So today's topics include life changes, economic impact payments and recovery rebate credit, earned income tax credit, additional child tax credit, unemployment compensation, retirement plan distributions. Next slide, please. Charitable contributions, refund interest payments, language preferences, identity protection pins, filing deadline, refunds, renewing expiring ITINs, and IRS.gov and online resources. Next slide, please. Understanding how last year's changes affected individuals and families and their tax return is important. The IRS developed the What Ifs for Struggling Taxpayers fact sheet to explain what taxpayers need to know about filing a complete and accurate return, claiming credits and deductions, getting a refund timely, and meeting tax responsibilities. There are some special circumstances related to COVID-19 that the IRS wants taxpayers to think about before filing. People facing financial difficulties may find that there's a tax impact to certain events, such as job loss, debt forgiveness, or tapping a retirement fund. In addition, the information on a taxpayer's 2020 tax return may look different from their 2019 tax return. Individuals can check the What Ifs for Struggling Taxpayers page for some scenarios that may have a tax impact for families. Examples include job-related, debt-related, tax-related, and additional related items like payment plans, etc. Next slide, please. Now let's talk about stimulus payments. Economic impact payments are commonly referred to as stimulus payments. The economic impact payments were based on your 2018 or 2019 tax year information, or if no return was filed, based on Social Security, Veterans Administration, or railroad benefits. Economic impact payments were issued to eligible individuals in 2 rounds. The first payment was $1,200 or $2,400 if filed jointly with a spouse, plus $500 for each qualifying child. And the second payment was $600 or $1,200 if filing jointly with a spouse, plus $600 for each qualifying child. The payment amounts were reduced if your income was above certain limits, and these payments are not taxable. At this time, the IRS and Treasury Department have issued all first and second round payments. If you did not get a first or second payment or got less than the full amounts, you may qualify for the recovery rebate credit and must file a 2020 tax return to claim it, even if you don't normally file. These economic impact payments were paid as an advance payment of the 2020 recovery rebate credit. The 2020 recovery rebate credit has similar eligibility requirements, except that the eligibility requirements are based on your 2020 tax information and circumstances. A change in income or circumstances could make a person eligible for the recovery rebate credit. For example, some people may have received less than the full economic impact payments because their incomes were too high in 2018 or 2019, and they can now claim the 2020 recovery rebate credit based on 2020 income if they otherwise qualify. Or if a person was claimed as a dependent on someone else's tax return in 2018 or 2019, but can no longer be claimed as a dependent on someone's return in 2020, they may be eligible for the recovery rebate credit. If a person is eligible and either didn't receive the economic impact payments or they think they qualify for more than received, they can claim the 2020 recovery rebate credit when filing their 2020 tax return. Individuals must file a 2020 tax return to claim the 2020 recovery rebate credit, even if they are not normally required to file. And you can go to irs.gov/RRC for more information on that topic. Next slide, please. Following the approval of the American Rescue Plan Act, the third round of economic impact payments has begun reaching Americans. These payments have been or will be sent by direct deposit, which many recipients have already received. Additional batches of payments will be sent in the coming weeks by direct deposit and through mail as a check or a debit card. The vast majority of these payments, however, will be direct deposit. The third round of stimulus payments, those authorized by the 2021 American Rescue Plan Act, differs from the earlier payments in several respects. The third stimulus payments will be larger for most people. Most families will get $1,400 per person, including all dependents claimed on their tax return. Typically, this means a single person with no dependents will get $1,400, while a family of 4, a married couple with 2 dependents, will get $5,600. Unlike the first 2 payments, the third payment is not restricted to children under age 17. Eligible families will get a payment based on all of their qualifying dependents claimed on their return, including older relatives like college students, adults with disabilities, parents, and grandparents. No action is needed by most taxpayers. The payment will be automatic and, in many cases, similar to how people received the first and second round of economic impact payments in 2020. People can check the Get My Payment tool on irs.gov to see the payment status of the third stimulus payment. Next slide, please. Most eligible people will get the third economic impact payment automatically and won't need to take additional action. The IRS will use available information to determine eligibility and issue the third payment to eligible people who filed a 2020 tax return, filed a 2019 tax return if the 2020 return has not been submitted or processed yet, did not file a 2020 or 2019 tax return, but registered for the first economic impact payment using the special non-filers portal last year, are federal benefit recipients as of December 31st, 2020, who do not usually file a tax return and receive Social Security and Railroad Retirement Board benefits, supplemental security income, and veteran benefits. The IRS is working with these agencies to get information updated for 2021 to assist with stimulus payments, and these payments should start to go out very shortly. Next slide, please. On the IRS website, you can find more information about who is eligible for the third economic impact payment and what income levels qualify, how the IRS knows where to send payments, what if bank accounts have changed, will people receive a paper check or a debit card, how married couples are affected if only one spouse has a Social Security number, and information on what people who did not file a 2019 or 2020 tax return and also didn't register using the non-filer portal last year can do to receive their payments. More information about economic impact payments can be found at irs.gov/EIP, and the status of payments can be checked at irs.gov/getmypayment. In addition, other COVID-19 related tax relief information can be found at irs.gov/coronavirus. Next slide, please. The Earned Income Tax Credit is the federal government's largest refundable federal income tax credit for low to moderate income workers. If an individual qualifies, they can use the credit to reduce taxes owed and maybe increase their refund. For example, the ITC is worth as much as $6,660 for a family with 3 or more children, and up to $538 for taxpayers who do not have a qualifying child. 4 out of 5 eligible taxpayers in the U.S. receive EITC. Almost a third of those who qualify for EITC will qualify for the first time this year due to changes in their marital, parental, or financial status. There is a new EITC rule this year to help taxpayers. People whose incomes in 2020 was less than it was in 2019 can use the 2019 income levels to qualify for EITC. And that's an election the taxpayer can make, and we encourage that if it results in a bigger tax credit. The ACTC, or the Additional Child Tax Credit, is for certain individuals who get less than the full amount of the child tax credit. Like the EITC, when filing a 2020 tax return, individuals may be able to use their 2019 earned income to figure the ACTC if their earned income was more in 2019 than in 2020. Again, this is typically better to choose the option that results in the larger credit. And more information can be found on the instructions for Form 8812 for those interested. Next slide, please. In some cases, criminals sought to exploit the situation from the pandemic, filing fraudulent unemployment benefits using stolen identities. Taxpayers who receive Form 1099-G for 2020 unemployment compensation they did not receive should take the following steps. First, they should contact the issuing state agency to report the fraud. Next, they should ask the state agency to issue a corrected 1099-G. The state will need some time to investigate the fraud complaint and make any corrections necessary. The taxpayers should file an accurate federal tax return reporting only income received, even if a corrected 1099-G has not yet been received. Next slide, please. The American Rescue Plan Act, enacted on March 11th, 2021, included a new exclusion of up to $10,200 of unemployment compensation. If your modified adjusted gross income is less than $150,000, the American Rescue Plan Act excludes from income up to $10,200 of unemployment compensation paid in 2020, which means you don't have to pay taxes on that amount. If you're married, each spouse receiving unemployment compensation doesn't have to pay tax on unemployment compensation of up to $10,200. Amounts over $10,200 for each individual are still taxable. In most cases, an amended return will not be necessary for taxpayers who filed before the legislation passed, and the IRS will issue corrective adjustments and payments beginning in May. Next slide, please. Some taxpayers found it necessary to take coronavirus-related early distributions from 401k plans and traditional IRAs in 2020. Under the CARES Act, those distributions, up to $100,000, are not subject to the 10% additional tax that otherwise generally applies to distributions made before an individual reaches age 59 and a half. Next slide, please. In addition, a coronavirus-related distribution can be included in income in equal installments over a 3-year period, and an individual has 3 years to repay a coronavirus-related distribution to a plan or IRA and undo the tax consequences of the distribution. These coronavirus-related withdrawals may be included in taxable income either over a 3-year period, 1/3 each year, or in the year taken at the individual's option. They're not subject to the 10% additional tax on early distributions. They're not subject to a mandatory withholding tax, and they may be repaid to an IRA or workplace retirement plan within 3 years. Next slide, please. The Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act included several temporary tax law changes to help charities. This included the special $300 deduction designed especially for people who choose to take the standard deduction rather than itemizing their deductions. This change allows taxpayers to claim a deduction of up to $300 for cash donations made to charity during 2020. The deduction lowers both adjusted gross income and taxable income, translating into tax savings for those making donations to qualified tax-exempt organizations. Before making a donation, taxpayers should check the tax-exempt organization search tool on irs.gov to make sure the organization is eligible for tax-deductible donations. Cash donations include those made by check, credit card, or debit card. They do not include securities, household items, or other property. Next slide, please. Refund interest payments are taxable. In general, the IRS paid interest on individual 2019 refunds on returns filed by July 15th, 2020. The interest covered the time from April 15th, 2020 until the date of the refund. These refund interest payments are taxable, and taxpayers must report the interest on their 2020 tax return. The IRS will send Form 1099-INT on interest over $10 paid in 2020, and taxpayers should already have received those. Next slide, please. For the first time ever, the IRS Forms 1040 and 1040-SR for seniors are available in Spanish. In addition to being available in English and Spanish, the 2020 Form 1040 will also give taxpayers the opportunity on Schedule LEP to indicate whether they prefer to receive written communications in one of over 20 languages other than English. Next slide, please. Taxpayers should file their returns by May 17th, even if they can't pay the full tax owed. If a taxpayer believes they may have trouble paying a tax bill by May 17th, they should not panic. They should still file the return even if they are unable to pay in full. They can do that by going to www.irs.gov/payments. They should pay as much as they can to avoid penalties and interest. Filing timely is especially important because the late filing penalty and the late payment penalty on unpaid taxes add up quickly. The IRS offers payment options such as short-term extensions to pay, a payment plan, or an offer in compromise, or a request to temporarily delay the collection process until the taxpayer's financial situation improves. Next slide, please. Most refunds are sent in less than 21 days. Some require further review and take longer. Just as each tax return is unique, so is each taxpayer's refund. Different factors can affect the timing of a tax refund after the IRS receives the tax return. The fastest way to get a refund is to file electronically and use direct deposit. They will receive a refund much faster than if they mail a paper return and request a check in the mail. Although the IRS issues most refunds in less than 21 days after a return is processed, the IRS cautions taxpayers not to rely on receiving a refund by a certain date, especially when making major purchases or paying bills. Some returns require additional review and may take longer to process. And this can be true when a return has errors, it's incomplete, or it's affected by identity theft and fraud. The IRS will contact taxpayers by mail when more information is needed to process the return. Next slide, please. Refund information will generally be available within 24 hours after the IRS acknowledges receipt of an electronically filed return on the Where's My Refund tool on irs.gov and on the IRS To Go app. The IRS cannot answer refund status inquiries unless it has been 21 days since the taxpayer filed a tax return electronically. That 21-day time frame begins on February 12th or when the IRS accepts the return, whichever is later. We update the Where's My Refund tool daily, usually overnight. Next slide, please. Help is available on irs.gov for the fastest service. The around-the-clock information is available, and it's generally the fastest way to get assistance. Next slide, please. Thank you very much for listening to my presentation. I look forward to your questions at the end. Thank you.
Well, thank you so very much. We really appreciate all that wonderful information. Alec, thank you very much. And now we'll hear from Eric from the North Georgia Low Income Tax Clinic. Eric, we're ready for you now. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you to Representative McBath for having me and for putting on this presentation. I know that tax season can be really stressful for a lot of people, so I think this is a great event. Thank you to Alec for that presentation. Like I said, a lot of important information in there. Today, I'm here to talk about free and low-cost tax resources that are available to folks who are either preparing returns or facing tax issues and who need some assistance. Can we go to the next slide, please? Excellent. So a couple of different categories of resources that I'm going to be discussing today. The first one is for folks who need help filing their 2020 tax returns, or current year tax returns. Broadly, I'm going to be speaking about two different programs that are related. Both of them are funded by the IRS and generally will provide no-cost assistance in filing tax returns. Those are Volunteer Income Tax Assistance Clinic, abbreviated VITA, and Tax Counseling for the Elderly Clinics, usually abbreviated as TCE. What do these clinics do? Generally, these operate during tax season. They assist individuals in preparing tax return, and they're generally staffed by volunteers, so people who take the time, get trained to prepare tax returns, and then help folks for free throughout tax season. Why is it a good idea, if you qualify for these services, to go to get assistance from a VITA or a TCE clinic? First is that it's free. It's always good to have these resources available. And if you're in a situation where you don't have a lot of resources to spend hiring a professional like a CPA or a professional preparer, these can be a great option for you. The other virtue is that these clinics are reliable and professional. They're generally supervised and staffed and trained by folks who have a lot of experience doing tax returns. And so the folks who are there, are going to be doing a good job with your returns. They're also very reliable. In the United States, there are not a great number of requirements for a person to pass, to qualify to prepare taxes. Almost anyone can open a tax preparation business. And while most preparers are great, do a really good job, there have been many instances of folks doing so in less than scrupulous ways. So if you have the option to work with a VITA clinic or a TCE clinic, you can be sure that the folks there are on the level and are going to be doing work for your benefit. The one caveat I would say, especially in context of the discussion we've been having today about the economic impact payments, the stimulus payments, if there's one reason not to work with a VITA clinic, it would be that if you need to have your return processed quickly, it might not be the best option for you because many of those clinics do file paper returns. As Alec alluded to in his presentation, the IRS is still dealing with the backlog of paper mail as a result of the coronavirus pandemic. So paper returns are taking quite a long time to process right now. So if you do need to have your return processed quickly, especially if doing so would help or facilitate you receiving a stimulus payment, if that's one of your main reasons for filing, finding a place that has e-file capability might be a better option for you. Next slide, please. So who qualifies to receive assistance from a VITA clinic? Generally speaking, it is available only to individuals making less than $57,000, but it is also available to people with disabilities and people who are not fluent in English. So generally, they will have language resources and interpreters available for people who need them. Generally, in those cases, you would just call in and request those services, and they should have them available for you. TCE clinics work with anyone who's over the age of 60 and generally have good resources available and people who are specialized and trained to deal with issues that are specific to seniors. So things like retirement account distributions and things of that nature. The IRS does have a very convenient locator tool that I've included a link here. It's irs.treasury.gov/free-tax-prep. You should be able to input your zip code and search for clinics that are available in the area around you. The locator tool also provides you with contact information for those clinics, tells you their schedule, things like that. So it is pretty easy to find these clinics if they're available in the area around you. Next slide, please. So what do VITA and TCE clinics do, and maybe more importantly, what do they not do? So first things first, they do prepare current year returns. Some VITA clinics and TCE clinics will prepare prior year returns or help you prepare amended returns. Many of them do not. So if you need those services, it would be a good idea to check with the clinic before signing up or making an appointment if that's the service that you're looking for. They generally prepare individual returns, but not business returns. So for example, if you run a small business that's organized as a corporation, so it has an obligation to file a separate return, like an 1120, you would need to find another resource. You wouldn't be able to get that done for free at a VITA clinic. Generally speaking, VITA and TCE also limit themselves to relatively simple returns. They won't take on very complicated issues, things like if you are self-employed, you own your own business, you have complicated deductions and expenses that you need to declare on Schedule C. VITA generally won't work with that return. Capital gains is another issue where VITA and TCE clinics generally can't or won't help you with those because those issues are a little bit complex, and training volunteers to deal with the full range of issues that might potentially come up on a tax return, of course, is not really possible. As I said before, TCE clinics specialize in issues that are unique to seniors, things like pension, retirement, income issues. So if you are dealing with some of those issues, or if you know that those issues are ones that come up on your tax return, it might be good to specifically look for a TCE clinic to assist you. Next slide, please. All right, so those are the main resources available if you are working on preparing your 2020 returns, so current year tax returns that you need help with filing. There are also a range of other resources that are available for people who have encountered tax problems. So people kind of interact with the tax system usually in two different ways. The first one is filing a return. So VITA and TCE are great resources for folks who want to file the return, kind of as in the normal course of your life. The other side, the other way that people generally interact with the tax system is the less fun side of the tax system when you receive a letter from the IRS or there's some other action taken with respect to your taxes, where there's an adjustment or a problem with your taxes. That's where LITCs come in. LITC stands for Low Income Taxpayer Clinic. My organization is the North Georgia Low Income Taxpayer Clinic. This is what we do. Generally, these clinics provide free or very low-cost legal services to low-income individuals and families who have tax controversies. These are independent organizations, so just like VITA and TCE, low-income taxpayer clinics are not part of the IRS. They're separate organizations. They have their own funding, but they do receive funding from the IRS, but they're not IRS employees. Generally, LITCs will be staffed by full-time attorneys, enrolled agents, and other experienced tax professionals, so folks who do this kind of all the time. A lot of LITCs also work with volunteer attorneys who will take on matters pro bono through them in order to help folks in their community who have tax troubles. Eligibility for LITC assistance is a little bit different than VITA and TCE. Generally speaking, we're able to take anyone who has income below 250% of the federal poverty guideline. Those are guidelines established by the Department of Health and Human Services that determine, basically, if you hear someone talk about the poverty level in the United States, that's usually what they refer to. This varies based on household size. So 250% of the federal poverty guideline for a single individual would be $32,200. For a family of four, that 250% level would be $66,250. It's also important that LITCs generally only take on relatively small tax cases, which means that an amount in controversy per taxable year that's less than $50,000. If you're watching this, I probably agree with you that $50,000 per year is not necessarily a small controversy. But if you are dealing with tax problems significantly larger than that, often LITCs cannot assist you with those, and you would be better served seeking paid representation. Next slide, please. So what do LITCs do? What do I mean by tax problems? I said I use that term tax controversies, but it's not always clear what that means. There are a range of different disputes that people can have with the IRS. The most common one that we deal with almost always is when folks owe money to the IRS. So like Alex said in his presentation, if you aren't able to pay, if you for some reason something during the year went wrong and you end up owing taxes when you file your return, but you aren't able to pay the amount, there are a range of different things that you can do, and LITCs can help with that. Other circumstances that might come up if you receive a letter from the IRS asking for more information, for verification from your identity, or stating that they've examined your return and that there are some adjustments that are going to be made to your return. In each of those situations, having representation to help you with that issue, sort that out, provide the documentation necessary, or if necessary, defend you from adjustments to your return. LITCs are good for helping with all of those issues. Finally, another common issue that we deal with is folks who are due a tax refund, but for some reason haven't received it yet. There's a whole range of different things that can muck up the process between the time that you file your return showing a refund and the time that it actually gets sent out to you. LITCs can help sort through those issues and get your refund released to you in as timely a manner as possible. The things that LITCs don't do, there are kind of two main things that we don't do that are tax related. The first is preparing current year returns. So if all you want to do is prep your 2020 return as you normally would, looking to VITA or to TCE is the better option for that. LITCs generally won't do that. The other thing we don't do is prepare ITIN applications. ITIN stands for Individual Taxpayer ID Number. This is for someone who needs to file United States taxes, but does not have a social security number. So it's a number that you would use instead of your social security number to file taxes. Generally, LITCs aren't permitted to help with the application to receive an ITIN. So if you're a person who needs to file taxes in the United States and doesn't have a social security number and you need to help kind of get set up to do that, an LITC would not be able to assist you with that. Next slide, please. how can I find an LITC? So if you need assistance from an LITC, you're experiencing some of these problems, there is the IRS does again have a locator tool for these. This one is through the Taxpayer Advocate Service, which we'll talk about in just a minute. So there's both a locator tool that can sort by state or by zip code, and also a full list of every LITC in the country that you can find on this slide. Next slide, please. All right, the last resource that I do want to discuss is actually a division of the IRS called the Taxpayer Advocate Service. There's actually one person who's called the Taxpayer Advocate. She's great. And the Taxpayer Advocate Service is the office that is managed by the Taxpayer Advocate. It is a division of the IRS. So unlike LITCs and VITA clinics, this actually is part of the IRS rather than independent organizations that are funded by the IRS. The role of the Taxpayer Advocate is to be a voice for taxpayers inside the IRS. So most of the time, the IRS's job is to, enforce the tax laws and collect revenue for the government. TAS is there to defend taxpayers, to work on their behalf, to advocate for them. If you have tax problems generally and are facing financial difficulty, you can generally open a case with the Taxpayer Advocate and ask them for assistance. Generally, their bread and butter, the thing that they want to do the most is to help people resolve problems when ordinary IRS processes are either not sufficient or not working as they should. So refund issues especially, TAS is great with helping with refund issues. Like if there's some erroneous information in your account that's preventing or that has caused your refund to be held when it should have been paid out to you, TAS is really good at clearing those kinds of things up. Isn't just an example of a time when an IRS process, which is issuing you a refund, might not have gone exactly right. Generally, if you're going to open a case, for a new matter, you contact the National Taxpayer Advocate Office. So their website and phone number are listed here on this slide. Once you open a case with the National Taxpayer Advocate, they will generally assign your case to one advocate in your local office. The really nice thing about TAS is that they assign your case to one person and you have contact information for that one person, so you don't have to get tossed around to a bunch of different folks to deal with a single problem. So it is really nice that they are committed to that. So working with TAS can often be a very pleasant and beneficial situation. Next slide, please. Here's our contact information. Like I said, this is the North Georgia Low-Income Taxpayer Clinic. We are an LITC. We help folks with tax controversy issues. So if you have any issues like that, feel free to give us a call or to shoot us an email. That's my personal email address right there. So if you have any further follow-up questions after the presentation or something like that, do feel free to reach out to us. I'd be happy to discuss and either direct you to the resources that are appropriate or to help you out with whatever tax issues that you might be facing. So that's what I have today. I'd be happy, and then we'll, I think, move into a question and answer session.
Well, thank you so very much. We really appreciate all that really good information, Eric. And yes, you're absolutely right. Now I think we have time for a few questions that have already been submitted by our attendees. And our question and answer session is actually going to be moderated by Abigail.
Thank you, Congresswoman. So our first question is from an attendee who filed their 2019 taxes late. So the IRS received the 2019 taxes on March 17th of this year. They would like to know when they can expect their 2019 return to be processed and when the refund will be processed and how that may impact their economic impact payment. So that's a threefold question. Alec, let's start with you.
Okay, I guess it's important to know whether it was paper or electronically filed. We are currently working through the backlog. It looks like as of February 20th, the Kansas City Service Center was processing mail dated February 5th. So just to give you an idea about where they were at that point in time. As of March 12th, there were 8.2 million individual tax returns in the processing pipeline. Of those, 2.3 million were received before January 1st. So there is still a backlog in paper return processing. To give a sense of where the service is there. Once it is processed, the typical return is processed within 21 days, unless there's some kind of an issue with that. Assuming there's no issue with that, they can expect a refund, at the end of that 21-day period or sooner. As far as EIP payments, for EIP 3, the stimulus payments are being sent to taxpayers on an ongoing basis, and so it would go in a queue for payment at that point. So it's hard to speculate exactly when that would occur exactly, but that's the general framework of how it's looking right now.
Thanks, Alec. And a quick follow-up to that one. This same attendee would like to know if they should still file their 2020 taxes or their 2020 tax return, even if their 2019 tax return has not been processed.
I'm happy to field that one. I would say yes, generally. You can always file, even if you have missing returns previously. It's a good idea to file your current year tax return kind of as you normally would, especially if you're looking for an economic impact payment. The way that the advance payments, the stimulus payments are structured is that the IRS will look at your 2019 information only if they don't have 2020. So even if you're waiting for your 19 return to be processed, if you are looking to get the stimulus payment, filing 2020 and especially electronically filing your 2020 return is going to be the best way. Like if you did file 2019 on paper, you can probably get ahead of that and actually get your stimulus payment even more quickly if you're able to electronically file your 2020 return now, because then 2019 won't actually factor into the determination of whether you're going to receive a payment at all. So they'll just look at 2020 if you're able to e-file that now.
Thank you so much, Eric. This next one is actually going to go to you as well. You mentioned the income qualifications for a single person qualifying for VITA. Can you extrapolate or expound on the qualifications for a couple that's married and filing jointly?
Yeah, so just like for LITCs, the income levels for VITA, I do believe, scale up based on household size. I don't have the exact amount in front of me, but generally it starts at 57,000 for an individual and will scale up from there based on family size. If you're unsure, the easiest way to check is just to contact your local clinic and ask them whether or not you qualify.
Thank you so much. And then another one for you about LITCs. Can an LITC help someone with their tax return for their sole proprietorship?
Depending on the specific issue. So if you're filing a current year return, and like this is just you're filing your 2020 return, generally we wouldn't be preparing, like I said, current year returns. Typically folks who are doing business with a sole proprietorship, it's a good idea to have accounting and tax help support for your business kind of in any case. If you have issues with prior year returns, there is a controversy implicated there because late returns mean there's potential for penalties and things like that. So if you're behind on filing and need to catch up or need to come into compliance and then potentially to deal with any of those penalties, then LITCs absolutely can help.
Thank you so much. This one can go to either of you. If someone has to claim the recovery rebate credit for a missing payment, but they owe taxes on their 2020 return, will the recovery rebate credit be deducted from the amount that they owe, or will they still receive that payment?
I can take that one. The recovery rebate credit will not be reduced by pre-existing federal tax debt. Even if there's a balance due, They might get a notice later for that same amount of money that would have gone to a balance due, but that's not, the IRS is not reducing the size of the recovery rebate credit for past due federal debt.
Thank you so much, Alec. Another one about the recovery rebate credit. This person is retired and is a Social Security recipient. If they need to claim the recovery rebate credit, will they still need to file a tax return even though they're not a normal filer?
Yes.
I can take that one as well. Yes, I agree. To get the credit, you would have to file a tax return, even if it's not normally the taxpayer's practice.
Fantastic, thank you so much. And then the last question can go to either one of you. This is about the earned income tax credit. This constituent asks, do I need to wait until tax year 2021 to claim the earned income tax credit?
I can take that one. No, so the earned income tax credit has been around for a long time. It is generally available to anyone who has earned income throughout the year. There's like a technical definition of what counts as earned income versus unearned income. So as long as you have some earned income during the year, you're a bit eligible for the credit. The credit, however, does phase out over an income range. So if you make, a substantial amount of money, then you won't be eligible for it, above a certain threshold. And there is an overall cutoff for your adjusted gross income. So it phases out over a range of earned income, but there's also a maximum cutoff for adjusted gross income, which is all income earned or unearned. So there are specific eligibility requirements for the earned income credit, but it's been available and it is still available for, 2020 and prior years in addition to 2021. However, the American Rescue Plan made some changes to the earned income credit, particularly for individuals who do not have dependents. So the American Rescue Plan has a whole bunch of different provisions that provide tax relief or put money in the pockets of families with children, which is mostly through a very, very significant expansion of the child tax credit and also an expansion of the child and dependent care credit, both of which are, obviously exclusively limited to folks with children. But the earned income credit is also expanded for people who do not have children. So individual filers who are able to claim the EITC. So the income range in which you can claim the EITC for 2021 is going up pretty significantly. But if you fall within the range for the old range, you can still claim it for 2020 and for prior years.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Eric. That was very thorough and very helpful. That's all the questions we have for right now, but I would encourage any of our attendees on the call right now, if you have questions in the future, that you reach out to our district office and we would be happy to help address those questions. Congresswoman, I'll kick it over to you.
Well, thank you, Abigail. And just everyone that's with us this evening, thank you for your very thoughtful questions. And as Abigail said, if we didn't get a chance to answer any of your questions, all of your questions, or if you find that you come up with questions later on, just please don't hesitate to reach out to our Sandy, not Sandy Plains is where I actually live, Sandy Springs District Office by calling 470-773-6330 or emailing casework.mcbath@mail.house.gov. I have always have a dedicated staff that is standing by, and we're so ready to assist you with all of your needs and in any way that we can. And I just want to thank our experts from the IRS in the North Georgia Low Income Tax Clinic, Alec and Eric. Thank you so much for your wonderful and resourceful and just full of information presentations that you've given us. And once again, I want to thank all of you that are joining us for this webinar this evening. This has been a 12-month period unlike any other I think we've ever lived through. And I know how eager we are all to get back to the routines and traditions that we have been so missing. And yes, we're ready to get back to what we might consider a new normal. As more vaccination appointments become available, I encourage you to please get vaccinated and continue observing all the best practices from our public health experts. Together, we will get through this pandemic and return to normal even if it is a new normal. And once again, thank you all for joining us this evening. I pray that you all continue to remain healthy and safe. Take care and God bless.